Irashaimase! Hello and welcome to Fataris' Kitchen. I'm your host, Chef Fataris. It's time once again for Shoot 'em Up Saturday, and on the menu this week we have Dragon Spirit, a Namco arcade classic. What kind of taste will it have? Let's get cooking and find out. Released to arcades in 1987, Dragon Spirit would also see release across several different platforms as ports or as inclusions in various compilations. This is a title I've been familiar with for some time, and thanks to its release as an arcade archives, it gives me the opportunity to review it. Although I wouldn't place it among my favorite of Namco shoot 'em ups, I still think it's an interesting title to have a look at, especially if you're a fan of vertical scrolling shoot 'em ups of the era with some great art and a decent challenge presented to them. So before we dive into the game itself, I did want to point out the Arcade Archive menu here and this release that we have. So if you're familiar with the Arcade Archive releases, you'll know that oftentimes we do get multiple versions of a title, and that's definitely the case here. So we've got two versions presented. The old version, and this would basically be your 1.0 version. That's the original release of the game. And we also have the new version. So the manual that's presented in the game itself, the Arcade Archive release rather, does a good job of noting some of the differences between them, but I do feel they go beyond that. So the things that are noted is you've got changes to the movement speed, the collision detection, there's an added stage select feature as well as some continue bonuses. But there's also some other features under the hood as well. You can change some more settings that aren't present in the original version. It's rather nice that these two versions are included, but for our purposes today we'll be looking at the new version. Starting the game, we have our usual controls displayed there. And the arcade emulation boots right up. Putting coins into the machine, you might note that the game does support 2 players. However, this is not simultaneous, this is 2 players alternating. So keep that in mind. When you start the game, in the new version, we have this little select areas menu. So here you can select whichever stage you wish to start on, stage 1 all the way up to stage 9. If we don't select anything, it'll just default to stage 1. And we also have this neat little cutscene to begin the game. That's our character, Amul, who transforms into this blue dragon. And we set off to go save a princess by the name of Alicia, I believe. So right off the bat, we're thrown into the thick of the action in this title. The art in this game is really the highlight here, as you have some really neat sprites and designs with our main character being a dragon, which would kind of be unique for the era. I know there have been like other shoot 'em ups that have done this since, but for the time it would have been unique. And in addition to that, we also have some neat power-up systems at play here. So before we talk about those, let's talk a quick bit about what we have as far as our main attacks. So there are 2 attacks presented in this game. We have our base attack, which is referred to as the anti-air, and we also have our anti-ground attack, or basically our bomb attack. So think something similar to Twinbee or Xevious, where we have one attack for units on the ground, one attack for units in the air. Fortunately, thanks to the emulator, we do have the ability to bind those to one button, but there's this actually a problem that's present with that. So setting the anti-ground and anti-air to the one button, especially if you turn on the rapid fire, sometimes it'll get like stuck with just the anti-ground shot or the air shot, and you won't have an effective use of both. So you'll kind of want to monitor that, and partially due to that, I set up a different button where I'm using the one trigger for the anti-air and anti-ground, and then one for just straight up anti-air. So we picked up a power-up here that I'm actually really pleased to show off, and this power-up here is the Fire Breath. This is basically your full power version of the dragon, and we get to show this one off even with three-headed dragon. Unfortunately, we just lost it. which will bring me to my next point. Real quick, this is our boss of stage 1. A really impressive looking, like, sea dragon dinosaur thing. I'm not really sure why the enemy in this game, in these games are dinosaurs, but I do love the design for it. So at the bottom of the screen here, you'll note that there's 2 sets of 3 bars. One labeled life, one labeled fire. So this game does have a life system, but with each life you can take multiple hits. So the default is just 2 bars, but in the game settings it is possible to increase that to 3 bars. On the right side, the fire. So the fire is our firepower. It's possible to level up your main anti-air shot from level 1 to level 3. However, to do that we need to collect these various red power-ups. They're usually, or maybe like orange might be a better way to put them. They're usually in these orange eggs on the ground that we use the anti-air shots to break. It's also possible to pick up those power-ups from enemies that we defeat that are blinking. So that's how you can tell if an enemy has like a power-up, is if they are blinking when the normal variants of them are not. So if we select, or if we pick up 3 of those fire power-ups that I was talking about, then we upgrade our shot. So here's the level 2 version. But one thing to note is this game is actually kind of brutal. So that life bar there, even though we do have a life bar, if we take a hit, we'll lose 1 level of our shot. And if we have any additional heads, we'll also lose 1 head. So the penalty for taking a hit might as well be as bad as like actually straight up like losing a life. And with the enemies on the ground and various obstacles like these volcanoes we're having to dodge, things can get quite busy. And this game, even with like easier difficulty settings available on the new version in particular, is actually still quite challenging. There's also some issues with like just the way that the power-ups in the game behave. So if you get a power-up, it moves off screen very, very rapidly. This is the Power Wing power-up. This one allows you to be momentarily invulnerable, and indeed you can actually deal damage by running into enemies in the air. Of course, we're not down on the ground, so once again, we have to use our ground shot. But sometimes, like when you shoot power-ups out of the eggs, there like are really weird times where, like trajectory-wise, it just flies off the screen to the left, and a lot of times those eggs are on the edge of the screen, or sometimes like it'll fly to the right, and like it's just unobtainable straight up. And I don't know why the power-ups do that, and it's something that's kind of frustrating to me personally. So we missed a power-up there from that enemy, and that one's an interesting one. It's an S power-up, which in some ways feels like a downgrade, in other ways it's also a power-up. It basically makes your dragon small, which for this particular boss is actually quite useful, as you would be better able to dodge around those shots. With that boss taken out, we move on to stage 3. So one thing I do like about the game is the stage transitions are seamless. You'll start off where you defeated the boss and move on to stage 3. And that is basically Dragon Spirit served up for your enjoyment. So as far as the minus flavors are concerned, the 2 big ones that I have are, first off, the power-up problem that I was mentioning, where the power-ups just move so quickly off screen, and sometimes in bizarre ways that it's just not possible to collect those power-ups. So you'll get desperate or hasty to collect them, and oftentimes take damage trying to do just that. In addition to that, one thing that the title does have is you don't really have any invulnerability when you take shots. So it's possible, if you find yourself in an unfortunate situation, to take many shots quite from enemies quite rapidly and lose like 2 bars of health, basically all your firepower, all your heads, and maybe even end up in like just a really bad situation where you're like dead almost instantly. I don't appreciate it when like games are just like that difficult, even if it's just like a split second of like invulnerability. That I still really appreciate. So even like problems with like the power-ups and whatnot would be a little less in my mind if it wasn't so like difficult to well, if it wasn't so easy to go and lose what you obtained so quickly. But on the plus side, and this is something I feel I don't actually talk about enough, the game itself actually has some really cute music. It almost doesn't really fit the theme of the game, but I still thought I would mention it, as it's something that I do quite enjoy. In addition to that, I really like the pixel art that's present here in the game itself, even if everything seems a little bit on the small side. As far as the art's concerned, it feels like we're really zoomed out. What's present there is really like a neat and unique set of shoot 'em up enemies that you're not going to really see, especially from this particular era. Real quick before I go into my like final plus flavor, here we find ourselves with a rather interesting section of the game. So this one with these growing brambles, it seems like they bit off a bit more than they could chew with the system itself, as even if you're not firing, the rapid fire does create some additional slowdown here. But these brambles will just get to the point where it just like slows the system down to almost single frames per second. It's pretty bad actually, but this is the only part of the game where I've encountered slowdown to that degree. The last plus flavor I have is just how metal the idea of playing a multi-headed dragon is. And well, like I said, this isn't the only game where you are flying on a dragon or as a dragon in shoot 'em ups, but each time that does come up, that's one of the themes that I really do enjoy, as it's just something that's fun and a little out of the ordinary. So there you have it. Dragon Spirit served up for your enjoyment. So this is a title that, as I mentioned earlier, is not one that I would recommend to everybody, but if you're into this era of shoot 'em ups and are looking for a challenge, then I definitely think you might find some enjoyment in Dragon Spirit. Well, that'll just about wrap it up for this week's episode of Shoot 'em Up Saturday. As always, I want to thank you so much for joining us. I hope you have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next time.